And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. This is Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here. It is our continued series of NBA team previews. And this time we head to New Orleans, heading down to go ahead. Just the great food, the great spirit, the great community that is New Orleans. And who better to go ahead and tell us about what he may think of what the season lies ahead for the New Orleans Pelicans. Good man indeed. I mistakenly said Charlotte, but actually is the New Orleans Pelicans. He is an award-winning podcaster. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing today. Absolutely. Of course, at all the different detailed many things that he's doing. Again, he's just, I look at his, reason I reached out, besides just the fact of what he's doing with Hard in the Paint, the Bird Rights podcast, it just, man, he has just achieved a level of success that I am envious of, and I hope to aspire to get to one day. It is David Grubb. And David, great to have you here as part of the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.
Thank you for that introduction. And, the first team that I ever cared about in basketball was certainly the Los Angeles Lakers. It's funny because, obviously the Lakers are persona non grata in New Orleans for a number of reasons. But, Giant Steps, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's memoir was one of the first books that when I really started to get into sports books, that was one of the first ones I really read. I have a picture of him in his Power Memorial gear hanging on my wall, and he was the first person that I really loved. I was born in Michigan, so certainly Magic Johnson was somebody who influenced me as a guy who went to Michigan State and wanted to be like Magic. And then Kobe was one of those players. I first saw him in high school when I was in high school. I was in high school. He was on a show called Scholastic Sports America, which I'm sure you remember. And the number one player at the time was a kid from Louisiana named Lester Earl. And Kobe was the number 2 player in the country. And I remember watching him on that thing and being like, oh, that's the best player I've ever seen. That's the guy that I'm now his fan. And I became a fan of him that day. And I'll just say this quickly is like his final year, when he came to his last stop in New Orleans, I was able, my daughter's name is Natalia, and I named her Natalia after Kobe's daughter because I loved the name and I just thought it was fantastic. And so I named my daughter, and I mentioned that to him, and he gave a quick message on my phone to my daughter, and to this day it's one of her proudest items that I've ever given her. And for me, it's one of my favorite things that I've done in my career, is just to have that moment as just father to father, sharing our passion for our daughters.
Oh, that's awesome. As a father of 2 daughters myself, I know they would be overwhelmed as well, and that's just absolutely incredible. I wanted to go ahead and touch on 2 things that you had just talked about. Of course, Kobe. We know that there is now, according to reports in the Hollywood trade papers I follow for my pop culture side, there is going to be a interesting side of the Kobe life documented on film at some point in time down the road, from the aspect of the Brooklyn Nets and how they were at one time looking like they were going to select him. But John Calipari, depending on what the story you listen to, is, was talked out of it by other forces and whatnot. And I'm assuming that movie will go into detail on that. So I'm curious to see how that was portrayed. Plus, you mentioned Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and again, this is before my time, but in regards to, I remember his history, and especially when he was with Power, and how great a news story that was at the time about how elite he had taken Power Memorial to. And then later on with UCLA, the game in the Houston Astrodome, I believe it was, that really just absolutely elevated college basketball that time to a unprecedented level.
I think you could argue that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the most important basketball player ever, even if you want to say that he's not the greatest. He's the biggest high school recruit that we had ever seen. When he opened up West Coast basketball. Yes, UCLA had won a championship already, but New York was still seen as the center of the basketball world. And for the best player in New York City to go to California That was unprecedented. And then obviously his career with UCLA, what he did there, and then changing the rules of the game, then going to the NBA and becoming an MVP as early on as he did, taking a team like Milwaukee to the finals twice, winning a championship there, and then reopening the West Coast again when the Lakers were down in a kind of a doldrum. The Clippers didn't exist at that point, and then you looked at the rest of the West Coast. Portland had been pretty good, obviously at the late part of the '70s. The Sonics had their moment, but everybody needed LA to be great again. He comes out there and he wins MVPs, and then obviously the hub of Showtime and still the oldest MVP, Finals MVP in NBA history. So I think Kareem is one of those players. Like I would compare him to like a Stan Musial or Hank Aaron in baseball. Is like they did so much and are maybe the greatest to do it, depending on the perspective you choose, but are also extremely underappreciated.
Absolutely, indeed. Again, David, I appreciate you stopping by, talking basketball, NBA with me, but of course, the team that you're covering in New Orleans. How's best can I say this? All I think is probably the best I'd like to say it because they have talent on that team. I'd said throughout the summer, people are asking me as far as, well, if you wanted the Lakers to improve, where would you start? And I said, well, I would have, and of course, this is just, you make those imaginary trades out there. I said the first place I would have started was to reach out to Joe Dumars, since he seemed to be in such a giving mood with Atlanta. And so to said, I've got, of course, Austin Reeves. I've got assets that are on expiring contracts. I would have said this was before he signed an extension. What are your thoughts on Herb Jones? What are your thoughts on Troy? Those two, I think, will be the cornerstone of what you guys have building forward. But there's a certain Zion issue there as well. Zion Williamson, who knows what's going on with that, because it seems to transition from one thing to another regarding his weight clauses, regarding whether the contract stays guaranteed or not. The stuff that he's doing off the court obviously doesn't help the vision as well. Let's start with that right there. Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver, the Detroit basketball background, of course, with both. They come into play to run this organization. I want to know how your offseason went as a follower of the New Orleans Pelicans.
I give it a C plus B minus because there's so much risk involved in what the Pelicans did this offseason. Like you said, I think they do have in their starting lineup, the Pelicans are as competitive as anybody in the Western Conference. I mean, you look at what they have, and not counting DeJounte Murray, who may not be back until January or February with that torn Achilles, but a starting five of Jordan Poole, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, and either Yves Missi, who was second team all rookie last year, or Kevon Looney, who has 3 championships to his name with the Golden State Warriors. They may not be the best centers in the league, but I think you give that starting five a chance every night. I think that group can produce. I think the questions with the Pelicans are behind that starting five. I think you've drafted 2 players, and I think Jeremiah Fears could certainly be a star. But he and Derek Queen are a ways away from being contributors in the NFL. I mean, the NBA. You don't draft an 18-year-old point guard and put him on the floor and expect to win. Derek Queen, though he just finished his freshman year at Maryland, is going to turn 21 this year. So he's a little bit, as far as the way the NBA works now, behind the curve in that regard and has to learn and catch up with the players his age that have been in the league now 2 years. So there's a curve there that's going to happen for them. Your bench, as you look at it, Jordan Hawkins has been a disappointment since coming out of UConn. Sadiq Bey is coming off an injury where he missed an entire season. And the rest of the Pelicans bench is filled either with guys like a Jose Alvarado, who gives you stuff, but only plays about 50 games a year and has had dealt with a number of injuries, or you have a tremendous amount of inexperience at a guy like Karlo Makovic, who came off the bench last year and gave you some spark, but is a 24-year-old guy who's only played 60 NBA games. So I think you look at the Pelicans and it's an extreme. Everything has to go right this season. They put their eggs in that basket. Joe Dumars has said he expects this team to win. But when you look at it, it's hard to believe that the team that starts the season will be the team that ends it.
The thing I want to take away from that is, like you mentioned, a lot relies on, the hopes that Jeremiah Frears and Derek Queen do develop as basketball players, but you cannot expect from day one them to go out there and be able to give what this team needs right away. I mean, the old adage of how if you have to play a rookie point guard a lot of minutes right away, that doesn't speak well of your team's overall chances. I get that, and I understand that. The Derek Queen, though, I feel for the kid. He starts off and gets an injury almost right away at summer league, which here where I'm from, Las Vegas. Obviously, we saw that, and that just seemed like a really bad thing for the kid because there's a lot of pressure on what New Orleans gave up for him in a 2026 unprotected pick. So, like you said, if the season ends differently than the way it starts or the promise it might start on, yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the front office for what they did for Derek Queen.
Yeah, I mean, this is, Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver, their reputation is on making a lot of moves, and they did that this offseason. They made a lot of moves, but they have put the Pelicans in a position where they cannot, they absolutely cannot miss the playoffs this season. You gave up not, I mean, essentially, you gave up 2 first-round picks for Derek Queen because you had to give up a first rounder to get into you had to give up a first rounder next year to get into the first round this year, and then you gave up the second to move up into that Atlanta spot. And no player, no player is going to be able to justify that in 1 year. You know what I mean? You didn't draft Kevin Durant out of high school. You didn't draft LeBron James here. You drafted a kid who has skills certainly, but needs a lot of refinement to his game. I think his path to the court is shorter than Jeremiah Fears simply because the Pelicans do not have a lot of size. This is a team that only has 3 players on the roster above 6'10". So, I mean, it's in a league that's getting bigger and bigger. Once again, in the front court and in the Western Conference in particular, has gotten incredibly big in the front court. I think the Pelicans have to play Derek Queen as soon as he's healthy. Again, he suffered that broken wrist and had surgery on it this offseason already. I don't know if he'll be ready for camp. Hopefully he is, but they need him. Jeremiah Fears is much more of a question of how long is it going to take, and you're going to give him that time because you do have DeJounte Murray who can come back from injury. You do have Jose Alvarado back there, and you can play Jordan Poole as a combo guard and allow him to play the lead guard minutes. But you still have to get Jeremiah Fears on the floor as a first rounder, whether that means you've got to send him to Birmingham and allow him to get G League minutes and reps that a point guard needs. It's like playing quarterback. The reps are what you need on the court. And I don't know if those are available, especially when you consider that Willie Green in his career has not enjoyed playing rookies. The only rookies that he's played is due to injury. Herb Jones only played as a rookie because Zion Williamson was hurt at the start of that season. You have not really seen under him a lot of rookies get contributions. Yves Missi only played last year because there were no other options at center. So you got to wonder if Willie Green, in a year where he's under fire, where they have to make the playoffs, how much he's going to be willing to put his career in the hands of a couple of rookies.
There is a lot of concern again because especially in a loaded up Western Conference, the expectations. I don't know whether you're saying they're unjust or what have you. I know some people, like you said, when they're going to go out there expecting this team to win and win quite a bit, or at least get into the play, at least get a chance to go ahead and become a playoff team. Whereas there's a lot of other experts, like here in Vegas, that will tell you on the over-unders as far as where the wins are at. Doesn't quite look like it's shaping out to be, but I think a lot of the season depends on one individual. We talked about Derek Queen, a lot of pressure on him. Jeremiah Fears, not so much, because again, as a point guard rookie, you can't really put a whole lot of pressure on him. But there is one player there that has a lot of pressure on him, and it's not Trey Murphy the third. It is not, of course, Herb Jones. It is one Zion Williamson. Tell us, if you can, what's going on with Zion. There's a lot of mystery seemingly surrounded. I mentioned his off season, off the court wasn't exactly the most pleasant to deal with as well. I just wish when he was coming out of Duke, I wish I could have just been there. I didn't have to pay me, just to put an arm around him and say, you know what? These are the things you want to do. These are the things you might want to consider, because the things you want to do maybe quite didn't turn out the way you expected.
I think there's a couple of things that went wrong so far with Zion, and you take the injuries out of it because you can't predict injury.
The-
Certainly you can have behaviors maybe that contribute to it, and maybe him being struggling with his getting his fitness his first couple of years contributed to it then. But I will say the last couple of seasons he's been in good shape. I mean, when you see him, he's been consistently in good shape the last couple of years. Um, but the thing for Zion is this: I think David Griffin, the big mistake he made was not creating a culture that held Zion accountable from day one. We know it was difficult because his rookie season was the COVID year, and the season got interrupted. But there were reports early on that Zion was missing, not missing flights, but showing up late to flights, showing up late to practice, not being diligent about hitting the rehab table and things when he was hurt. Those things started his rookie year, but you never saw any discipline towards him. Last season, finally, there was a straw that was the one that broke the camel's back, and David Griffin suspended Zion for a game for being late to a team flight. But the media and the fans knew that that wasn't the first time, the fifth time, or the 10th time. And so when you get to that, you allow a player. And I think another thing the Pelicans did that was not good for him was they never centered him. Zion didn't get introduced as the last player in player introductions till this past season. And how many times have you ever seen that with a number one pick in NBA history, where that guy is not treated as, and especially for Zion Williamson coming into the situation he did, you're supposed to treat that guy like the franchise savior. That's what everyone thought he was. But
Mhm.
David Griffin, I think, played both sides of whether he thought Brandon Ingram, because of his availability, might be the guy, or Zion Williamson, if he showed up and was going to play, could be the guy. And I think ultimately Zion decided, I'll just see what happens. Because I think his personality, and we saw it at Duke, he's not a leader in that regard. He can be your best player, but he doesn't naturally feel like a leader. He's a kid who enjoys being part of the group. He enjoys being part of the team. He is very much an affable person, but he does not enjoy interviews. He does not enjoy the spotlight in that regard. And I think if that's the case, you have to provide real guidelines for a young man like that, because I think he can be led by his emotions and his desire to just kind of get along with people. I think you have to put strong figures around him, and they didn't really excel at that. JJ Redick was here for a season, but Zion was hurt a lot, and then he was gone. When they brought CJ McCollum in, Zion was hurt a lot, so that didn't really work either. And so they haven't really had the kind of veteran presence that could help him mature as a basketball player. But last season, he did start to mature. I will give him a lot of credit for that. He started to mature. Now, this is the referendum on his entire career, I think, this season, because Joe Dumars has said, we're building around Zion. But I firmly believe that's only a 1-year proposition. He's got 3 years on his contract, including this season. If it doesn't go well this season, are you going to reinvest in Zion for year 2 or year 3 or talk about an extension? I think if this season doesn't go well, next offseason, he's out. He's gone. Because as you said, you've got Herb Jones, you've got Trey Murphy, you've also got these two young rookies that you've drafted. You can move on and build a new structure without him. But I think this is the NBA and talent reigns supreme. As long as he shows that he has talent, and unless the injuries again, just he can't make it to 60 games this year, the Pelicans were going to give every opportunity to a kid with that kind of talent, because they're just so much better when he's on the floor. He's one of those few players that in a playoff series, he can beat a team by himself. You just know that game translates. Unfortunately, he's never played a playoff game. Pelicans have been to the postseason twice, and he hasn't gotten a single minute of postseason play. So I think everything about Zion's career comes down to this season, because even if he gets traded, no team will ever put him in position to be the number one guy again if he leaves New Orleans. Nobody will trust him. And I think if Zion ever wants to be that, he's got to prove it this year.
Once again, I'm speaking to David Grubb. Please go ahead and make sure you take care of him by following whatever he's doing out there, including Hard the Paid Sports Media, and also, as well, the Bird Rights Podcast. Absolutely some great stuff that he's doing out there. When it comes to Zion, I just say this again. There is the possibility, for instance, like with us with Dalton Connect on our team, there is the possibility that they could not guarantee a portion of Zion's contract, because it's right there, clear in writing. If he doesn't hit certain parameters, they have that option. And I don't see that happening. I see them, like you said, if it does start to go awry, I think forever how much teasing Troy and Joe have gotten about the Derek Queen uh, acquisition. I think they are smart enough and been in the league long enough to understand that if it's not going well, then it's time to send Zion somewhere where it might be greener pastures for him, but also in return, some better building blocks for the New Orleans Pelicans as well.
Think that if you did move Zion at the end of this season, certainly you're trying to get back into a 2026 draft that is considered one of the best of the last decade. That it's a draft that is very deep and it has a lot of tall, athletic players. Which is if you're getting rid of Zion Williamson, you're going to need some interior play again. So getting that kind of player could be very beneficial to the Pelicans. And I think that there will be teams that are absolutely willing to take the risk. As long as they have the kind of structure around that they feel they can compensate for whatever Zion can't do. But yeah, I think that, if you look at this, if you were going to tear this team apart, there's some pieces individually that you could sell off and get a lot back for. So the Pelicans are not, if it does go poorly this season, they're not in a dire situation because I think they could rebuild. I think the bigger question is, are Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver the people who are right to lead this team to a rebuild because of the spotty past that they've had recently in their front office careers? I think people want to have faith in the both of them, but again, New Orleans has been burned by promises before, and I think the fans also give a side eye to it because they know, like they've been promised the earth. I mean, the moon and the stars plenty of times, and yet this is a franchise that's won 2 playoff series in 24 years.
You're right in essence, and maybe that was their thinking heading into this off season. In what they did as far as their acquisition of Derek Queen was say, okay, we lose that first round pick for now, but if things don't go well, we have 3 players in our starting lineup, if they're healthy, that can garner multiple or at least one first round draft pick, if not multiple first round draft picks for those 3 players in Herb Jones, Trey Murphy III, and Zion could elicit those kind of yield back, excuse me, those kind of draft picks. So it's maybe that was their thinking going as well. We're going to take a gamble on Derek Queen. And if it doesn't go well as far as from a team standpoint, and we're finally tired of Zion, or we get the right offers for one of our 2 young core players, might be too hard to pass up.
I think they view Queen in some ways as someone who can replace some of the skills that Zion brings to the floor. He's known as a good passer. He can put the ball on the floor. At 6'9", he's not really a center as far as his build goes. You could put him at the 4 spot. As his conditioning and his fitness improves, that I think that's the hope, is that they can play him at the 4 and that you can run the offense through him in the post sometimes, which is what the Pelicans do with Zion in a lot of ways. But Zion is much more of a face-up player than Queen, and not going to shoot the 15-foot jumper. So I think that there are differences to their game, obviously, and I don't think Derek Queen is nearly the athlete that Zion Williamson is. But I certainly think that there's some skill replication there that the Pelicans were looking at. And like you said, and you mentioned those 3 guys in the starting lineup, if DeJounte Murray comes back and shows he's healthy, I don't think he gets you a high draft pick, but he could bring back player assets and maybe get you some second rounders, which are now stashable players in this league. And I think that that's another thing too. Jose Alvarado could be a contributor to a winning team. That another guy that you could trade off if things go badly. And I think even if Kevon Looney, who only has it's really a 1-year contract with a team option for the second year, another guy with playoff experience. If there's a team, and again, if it's not going well, or if one of these young players emerges, I think you could, at $9 million, Kevon Looney is a very movable piece for a team looking for veteran help in the front court down the stretch of this season. So I think the Pelicans have assets to improve for the long term. It's just you wonder if these 2 timetables, because with Murphy, Zion, and Herb, these are all 3 guys going into their early primes now at 25 years old. For Fears and Queen, you've got about 4 years before they get to that place. Are your stars going to be out of the mix by then? Are they not going to be with this roster by then? So I think balancing their development and putting the kind of supporting structure around your 3 stars is going to be a tough job for Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver.
So I want you to go ahead and put your prognosticator's hat on. So we'll go ahead
Mhm.
and see how things are going to be as far as let's say of seeing into the future. Let's just say everything went right for the New Orleans Pelicans this season in regards to Zion, the young core. DeJounte Murray does come back, gives you solid play from the point guard position. Let's just say that everything meshes well and works right. What do you think is the ceiling for your team?
I think the ceiling for the Pelicans, if everything goes well, is about 43 wins. I think that the Western Conference has about 6 teams that you consider firmly at the top of the conference. Beyond that, from 7 to 12 in the West, that as we've seen the last couple of years, there may be a game and a half difference when we get to the end of the season, 2 games between 7 and 12. This how teams decide to finish the season. Those teams that say, the plan's not worth it for us. That could be the difference in who gets in and who gets out. So I think if the Pelicans are healthy, they're right there in that 7 through 10 group in the West if everything goes well. If not, I think that they're closer to like a 35 win team. I think the sub 30 win predictions just don't make sense to me because this is a team that won 21 games last year and Zion only played 30 games and Trey only played 50. If Zion plays 50 games, they're a 30 win team. I think, in that regard, overall, I think they're a 30 win team. So I think 36 is probably the floor, and I would say 43 is probably their ceiling.
So, with that, my friend, and once again, David Grubb is here with us. And before he gives what I call the cheap plug, or basically he's going to let you know wherever you can find his great work at, I do ask my guests on all my team previews at the very end exactly what they feel on the Lakers. I love getting a perspective from other NBA knowledgeable individuals such as yourself on the Lakers. And you said your background was with the Lakers. So with that, my friend, and you see what the Lakers are coming into this season with, of course, Luka, skinny Luka, as he's now. Might as well just say on the back of his jersey, skinny Luka. At this point, LeBron James coming into his year 41 season, which he will turn in December. You see the players that they got with Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, and DeAndre Ayton. 2 of those guys definitely have something to prove being buyout individuals. And as I've said in other interviews, I think a lot of players wanting to prove a lot of things because of the fact that they are financially incentivized to do so because of the fact that the Lakers have an abundance of players on expiring contracts. So your thoughts about the Lakers heading into this season and where they might end up?
I think they're in that group in the top 6. Just because we know how good Luka Doncic is a guy who's going to finish top 5 in the MVP voting every year if he's healthy. LeBron's still, all NBA selection last year. I don't know if you're going to get 70 games out of LeBron this year, but he can give those nights off are certainly nights that Luke is capable if he's healthy. I think the question is the question has been for the Lakers for the last several years now is does the front court hold up and can they defend enough? Uh, I think those are the main things because you have 2 guys who are on the downside defensively. Luka has never been a great effort guy defensively. LeBron is getting slower defensively and has nights where he kind of phones it in if he can on that end of the court. So I think that's going to be it's on those guys. And I think the other part of it, and I really like the LaRavia pickup, mind you. I think he's a solid pickup for the Lakers. I think the other part too is how does JJ evolve in year 2? Because I think JJ is one of those people that we had him in New Orleans for a year and a half. And I'm certainly you do not question his basketball mind. But I think every coach goes through a development phase where you figure out the things that you don't want to do anymore. You're not Coach K. I'm not Pat Riley. I'm not this. But who am I as a coach? Because I think in the beginning you rely on those veterans that were around you to help you figure things out. He made some highly criticized move last year. If he settles down just a bit, like, I think that's just settled. I love the fire. I love the commitment to high standards with your team, but you can't live and die on every possession. I think that's the one thing for JJ is just to figure out it's not every minute, man. It's every night, sure, but it's not every minute. That's how you have to live as a player. You can't live that way as a coach.
I also love the press conferences as well because they're always just like eye opening from some of the things he says. At least,
He
in
gives
fact,
a
he can
great
no
interview.
longer. Yes, he is, and he can no longer say it on podcasts. So he's got to go ahead and voice it out there when he's, like you said, in interviews or post game press conferences. So yes, we will see. But yes, you are correct. It was a rookie season for a coach, and to find his pattern of coaching, to find his true style of coaching, it does take a lot of trial and error, ups and downs, and we definitely saw that from the aspect of the Lakers. He has 50 wins. He's to be complimented on that, but that playoffs where you saw some of the quirks set in, and
Mhm.
a more experienced coach, what they can do against that, and some of the things that he did, like for instance, that second half during the series where he didn't play or bring in any reserves, tells you a lot you need to know about where he needs to develop going forward. But also, it's on the front office to provide him better depth as well, and that's hoping that that's the case. But very well said, very great points indeed. David, again, I do want to bring you on during the season with your permission again to come on the show to go ahead and share your thoughts. But before we head on out, you got to tell everyone out there exactly all the great places that you're at and how they can go ahead and get a hold of your great work.
Sure, you can check me out on X and Instagram at DM Grubb. You can find me on Facebook and TikTok and Blue Sky as well. Just look for David Grubb there. Thebirdrights.com for all my written work. And then also you can check out the Bird Calls podcast, Hard to Paint podcast occasionally. And then there's also the Post Up on Boot Crew Media. I partnered with them. That's another sports media organization in New Orleans. The Post Up that airs Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays on YouTube. So you can check that out as well.
Oh, no. Awesome, awesome. Please like and subscribe. 5 stars that hold it's the life of a
Appreciate it.
podcaster. Absolutely. I mean, you and I are probably what between us 4 to 5,000 shows, you could say.
I used to host a daily radio show too, so yeah, I mean, like, just I've been doing this for a while, and we do it because we love it, man. Like that's I we are in the era of so many people doing this, and I think the ones that love it, the ones who really care, it stands with you. So I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to us talking again, man. For real.
Absolutely. I remember in 2009 when I started podcasting, and I would tell people, where you can hear. Oh, where can I hear you, man? I'm on a podcast. What's a podcast? What's a podcast? Is that some sort of I don't know what does that mean? It's like people look. A boy has it transitioned into
Right?
something else.
Everybody's got one now.
Exactly, as I've often get told. But David, your podcast, they do definitely need to check out. They do definitely need to follow your great work indeed. And again, David, I'm truly appreciative of the time you take with me here today, and I'm hopeful that we can go ahead and revisit the New Orleans Pelicans again this season.
Could be a great season. I'm really excited and looking forward to it. So hopefully there'll be some memorable meetings between the Pels and Lakers because there have been in the past.
Absolutely, indeed. Please go ahead and help out David Grubb by going ahead and following him on social media and also checking out all of his great shows. David, it's great once again to have you on the show and part of what we're doing right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.